What is up, guys? Welcome to the transparency. It's been a year. This is an intro to tonight's live episode. I want to welcome all the subscribers, all the members, all the moderators. Thank you for being here. I am slightly under the weather, but wouldn't miss today to remember the victims as well as what is going on in a case that this channel has covered from the beginning. All of you guys have been here from the beginning. And believe it or not, going through all of my pages here, I have every title of every episode I've ever made in this case, the amount of minutes that have been put forward in this case, and the amount of shows dedicated to this case and for justice. So check it out.
I understand that everybody wishes that this was solved already, but these things take time. It takes time to work through. You heard the stats of all the tips and everything, the interview.
Honestly don't know if that killer cut himself and has, mixed DNA in that blood, but you can't do that much activity and not shed a skin cell or a hair or a fiber off your sweater or your jacket or your hat. It's next to impossible. It's just how many other people have walked through that house through the agent.
For our investigators to work through. So please be patient as we work through this investigation. We owe this to these young kids, to these young adults. We owe it to them, and we are absolutely dedicated.
On December 27, 2022, Pennsylvania agents recovered the trash from the Kohlberger family residence located in Albright, Pennsylvania. That evidence was sent to the Idaho State Lab for testing. On December 28th, 2022, the Idaho State Lab reported that a DNA profile obtained from the trash and the DNA profile obtained from the sheath identified a male as being excluded as the biological father of suspect profile. At least 99.9998% of the male population would be expected to be excluded from the possibility of being the suspect's biological father. Based on the above information, I am requesting an arrest warrant be issued for Brian C. Kohlberger.
Please be patient. I understand that everybody wishes that this was solved already, but these things take time. It takes time to work through. You heard the stats of all the tips and everything.
Again, welcome, guys. Hello, welcome to the transparency. This is where we're at in this case. Is truly, it's been a year since 4 kids decided to go out one night, come home, and 6 people went to bed, and only 2 people woke up. So 4 people didn't wake up from what professionals and experts in their field have described as being one of the most horrific scenes in stabbings. Over the past year, I've covered the Idaho4 case, which is 4 students from the University of Idaho: Maddie Mogen, Kaylee Gonsalves, Ethan Chapin, and Xana Kernodle. And over the past year, up until December 29th, going into December 30th, this case was a case that captivated not only America, but it captivated the world, because there was a killer or killers out on, in the public. They were out on the loose. So my coverage from this channel, beginning November, 14th, till present day, the first 26 videos that I did from November, and this does not count any of the press releases that they did that I covered, but I did 26 videos prior to Brian Kohlberger being arrested. And I'm going to read the titles of these videos. My first video was John Jack Showalter. Those of you guys know him as Hoodie Guy from the Grub Truck video. Number 2 was Clues in Pressers for the Location. Number 3 was Person of Interest, POI, Jack John Showalter. And I mapped out the exits and where there could be surveillance cameras if, in fact, John Jack Showalter drove home that night to his parents to Boise. Episode 4, the University of Idaho. Is John Jack in classes? Number 5 was the enhanced Idaho4 Grub Truck video, where we pointed out the cussing of Maddie Mogen. Maddie Mogen was cussing, and it was like she was reenacting, telling Kaylee a story, pointing and saying, "Fuck you, fuck you." Number 6, episode 6, was the rare drone footage, one of the first drone footages that went over the house on day 2. Episode 7 was, did Jack D call Kaylee and Maddie back? All the news that we've heard that there was phone calls made. Well, the episode I did was, I wanted to know if when Jack D woke up, if he in fact was sleeping when those phone calls came in, did he in fact wake up and call Maddie or Kaylee back? Episode 8, it was the bombshell discovery made here on Truth and Transparency with the body cam footage that we were able to obtain through being creative to start bringing you guys video of actually the victims before their deaths. And that was the infamous noise complaint videos. So the first one, then I did a University of Idaho investigative timeline. Episode 10, I went back and I checked out the history of Idaho with the University of Idaho, and I went and found the teacher-student murder on campus back 2015. Number 11 was the Sigma Chi was exposed, the Gregory Johnson story. So I started talking about Sigma Chi and their ability to take cases or situations and events that happened, and they were maybe not pleasant with people being found unresponsive and then dying. So I covered that Gregory Johnson story. 12 was a promo timeline, and then I featured Scott Roeder. And Scott Roeder came, and that was the first time he had been on the show to talk about this, what type of crime scene we're looking at, what type of he profiled who we were basically looking for, and who he basically profiled was somebody like a Brian Kohlberger. I did an episode, number 13 was a month later. So we did from November, 12th. Then this episode was on December 12th and 13th. Then episode 14 was the 4chan big ol' to this day still being talked about as what took place. The 4chan, you could say, theory. Episode 15, what happened actually in Idaho. And this is when Scott Roeder was very, very direct, was saying nobody should have let anybody leave that campus. Whoever would have done this would have had, their hands would have been bruised really, really bad. And to allow the campus to just go and you can go ahead and do remote learning and things like that was a huge blow if you're trying to see if anybody changed their pattern. Number 16, released another body cam footage. Number 17, another body cam footage of 1122 King Road. Number 18 was the September 1st body cam. So they were there up and until a point. When it became midnight, then it was the next day. So we thought the cops were there back-to-back days. No, the cops were there twice. It was just happened to be after midnight. So that's when we released Xana's footage of being seen by Officer Payne. Then we did a big old reveal on this mystery ride-along. And we talked about how crazy it is to have somebody do a ride-along and get intel on houses and maybe possibly call up, do some dial-ups and use then body cam footage to obtain information, or use, creating situations and being a ride-along to obtain information through the police department. That was a big, big episode. 21 was when we revealed, I said, fuck it. I know that Dylan's bedroom was not on the first floor. We're going to bring it. And we revealed the 21st episode was Dylan's second floor bedroom episode. And people thought we were absolute crazy. Well, it turns out they lied to us. Dylan's bedroom was on the second floor. which means Dylan was right in the heart of it. Again, that came out way before there was an arrest, way before there was a PCA. Now, after that, I did a probability versus a possibility episode, is what's probable versus what is possible. Episode 23, I revealed the August 16th body cam footage, which was the police officers taking a picture of Kaylee's ID. This was not at the September 1st party. This was at a different noise complaint. It was in the dead of the afternoon. And we revealed that a cop took pictures and were talking about the layout of the house from the back end. Again, this was all before there was an arrest. I re-released I did a backstory and bombshells on the Idaho4 house. As I also covered, Maddie and Kaylee had a falling out, and you could see it through the communications on social media. And it was a very hard topic to want to cover. But when you're talking about victimology, when you're talking about who could have done this, we have to point, you have to talk about things that are uncomfortable. And that was a very uncomfortable live for me to do, was to talk about, two people that were best friends, I felt grew apart during college because of the different sorority houses that they had to go. Not that they had to go, but they were bidded on, and one didn't get the other one. But Maddie and Kaylee totally 100% grew apart. And actually it becomes transparent and well known when Christy does an interview and brings that to light. But it was after I talked about it on this channel, and that I said that was a very hard episode to want to talk about. Then I re-released episode 25, was Xana's body cam footage. The reason I re-released that and talked about some stuff was because Officer Payne did not follow protocol with him, even making it known that he was there. The only reason I knew that Officer Payne was there because of a report that another officer had wrote. And then right before the arrest of Brian Kohlberger, I did a sorority episode on Pi Phi's. And then episode 27, this was as soon as I got wind that there was an arrest, I went to the Latell County page and I did a 2-minute and 27-second video where I screen recorded everything and everybody that was in custody that day and anybody that had been arrested prior to. This way, if anything, they had tried to take something away. And we did this a lot with we were really big on those press releases that they did every day, because a big question is who was making the decisions in this case? Who was sitting around the big table discussing what steps they're going to take and which way they're going to go? Everybody says, why were all these people cleared so soon? Well, guys, the answer to that in terms of logic to me is that people were turning over their DNA and it wasn't matching that of the sheath profile, whatever they put into CODIS. Okay. That's my take on why they could think that they could exclude people. Now, the issue is that did they do that? Did they test that against the other unknowns? And I think that they're going to find some problems along the way that they did not. That's just my take. Again, because Bill Thompson wants to say that there's, the defense wants stuff that's not there. Well, it's not there because you didn't do your job, in my opinion, with those other unknown profiles. But we're going to get to all of that. Now, after those first 27 episodes, there was an arrest. The last thing that we did before the arrest of Brian Kohlberger, with the behind the scenes work all through the holidays and Christmas time, was I was working on obtaining, because I was really big on this. I had a huge problem with the fact that there was 6 people that lived at that house, or 6 bedrooms. We come to find out that Ethan didn't live there. Okay. He was there spending the night with Xana. So we have 3 girls that actually live there. They have vehicles there. But then the 2 girls that were not harmed were the only 2 girls that did not have vehicles in that area, meaning at the house. So I had a problem with that. I had a huge issue. I said, where are these 2 girls' cars? You cannot sit here and tell me that I have that big lot to park in and that I'm going to park on the street on that tight, so close, narrow road, or I'm going to park in the back, or I'm going to have to walk. And someone like Ethan, who doesn't live there, is going to have his Jeep parked there and I'm not going to have a spot. I had a huge problem with, where are these 2 girls' vehicles? You cannot tell me that these 2 girls don't drive. Really? Or then what are the odds that the 2 girls that nothing happens to them are the 2 girls that vehicles aren't there? Okay. So it gave a lot of, were these 2 girls, in fact, even there at the time? Did they leave? Where are their vehicles though? And we were able to, right before the arrest of Bryan Kohberger and during the arrest of Bryan Kohberger, I was trying to track down these 2 girls' vehicles to see if they, in fact, were searching. We're going through so much social media to try to find out, okay, I know Bethany's parents are loaded. They have a $1.7 million house in Nevada. Okay. I'd be one pissed off girl if you're going to send me to school in college. I get good grades and I'm a sorority chick. And now I'm in my 2nd, 3rd, whatever year, and I don't have a vehicle. I was just like, that's something that's possible. So I believe that Bethany had a vehicle. Then I get to Dylan, same thing. You see her taking selfies, and I find it hard to imagine that this day and age, how are you getting back and forth to Boise unless you're just taking a ride all the time? But at the end of the day, I wanted to find out about this vehicle, these people's vehicles, and that these vehicles were not there. And did they, in fact, really not have vehicles? Well, comes to find out that Bethany got a ticket in October for tailgating, for driving too close behind. We find this out at the same exact time almost as we're finding out, and it's coming out, that Bryan Kohberger was pulled over 2 times driving from Idaho to Pennsylvania, and he is getting pulled over for driving too close behind. We're on the phone with the people over in Washington. They're like, yeah, it's actually like a pretty big thing around here. You'll be surprised when we get, people pulling over for those reasons. But it's also when you are driving too close from behind and you actually get into a car accident, they will then cite you that if you wouldn't have been driving so close behind, you would have never gotten that car accident. You would have been able to stop in time. You wouldn't have hit them from behind. Okay. Because Bethany, what we've come to, find out and realize is that Bethany got a ticket, traveling too close behind, possibly wrecked her vehicle, and that's why it wasn't there. We do not have confirmation of that, but we do have confirmation Bethany got a ticket. She was supposed to pay it. She didn't pay it in time. It ended up getting a late fee charged on it. By the way, cheers to everybody out there. Cheers to the people that drink Modelo. So when I said that I can't get an affirmative answer on that, I do something based off of do I have her? I have the ticket, but I don't have the car. And that's all I'll say about that. But that was the day one that was it. That was in Pullman. It did not happen in Moscow. So, was you were trying to figure out what car Bethany was driving when that happened. Moving on. So Bryan Kohberger gets arrested. We have an exoneration episode. Then immediately I do a Bryan Kohberger and Dana Smithers case connection possibility because there was all these, they basically arrested Bryan Kohberger and said they want us to believe that this guy was about to become a serial killer. Okay. He was about to become a serial killer. Well, next was an extradition hearing. Then I did a client privilege attorney episode. Then I did a PCA, Brian Kohlberger PCA episode. I did part 2 of the PCA with location episode. Another PCA episode. I talked about the Idaho4, the preliminary hearing. And that is when they decided that we are going to set out a preliminary hearing for 6 months away. 6 months away. Well, I want to know who was in on making that decision. Who was going to talk to somebody and say, yep, we're going to agree to go ahead and have a preliminary hearing that's 6 months from today. Think about that. Episode 37, I did the mobile gas station, that footage of the car. 38, I did everybody's arrest records. 39, I had tons of questions, and I surrounded a CCTV and body cam, huge live question about all the CCTV and the body cam. Then episode 40, oh, thanks. Episode 40, I did Brian Kohlberger, the intern episode. The intern, and that was he an intern at the university, WSU? Was he a possible intern, meaning in the capacity of the police department? Okay. Because remember, when he was first arrested, everything was sealed. Then I did a explosive episode 41. I did a PCA page 15. Wow. And I'll talk about that a little bit later in this live. Episode 42, I did a November 29th, 2020. Same day, I pointed out that Brian Kohlberger's vehicle was found the same day that they moved all the vehicles from the 1122 King Road house. It was the same day they moved those cars after finding Brian Kohlberger's car. So I said, that's interesting with the transferring of possible stuff in vehicles. You're going to find Brian Kohlberger's vehicle, and on the same day, then you're going to move all of the vehicles. Because I want to know who was involved in it. Then episode 43 was Brian Kohlberger's search warrants. Episode 44 was I got some stuff from WSU that I was able to get before they wiped it all down from the internet, which was what your workload and class load would be like if you were to be in any part of like a police department role with the university. I talked about the gag orders. 45. 46, we found the Brian Kohlberger, the email that he sent back and forth with the Bill, it was Jenkins, which was the police chief back then. And that was actually in April of 2022. So when people say that he applied for something in the fall of 2022, no, he applied for stuff in what was it? He applied for everything that he was doing and going across country. He applied for in the spring of 2022. So it was all rumors and lies about anything saying that he applied for stuff just that fall. Totally not fucking true. I did a big episode on the WSU corruption that had been going on in WSU's police world on campus. People were having sex. Police officers were having sex with students after they would like get in trouble. They were doing it in like the stadium, just wild shit. There was another noise complaint. And so I decided to do a deep dive in all the noise complaints and who was truly calling on these students, and did they really live where they said that they were living, and what could they really hear from where they were calling from, things like that. And I came across that I had some issues with it, and I think that it needed to be looked into more because it's the same fucking broad that was calling all the time. And come to find out, she had just got in a car accident and crashed into a cyclist and killed him. And then she starts making a bunch of phone calls for noise complaints. Let's see. Bella made me a bunch of like cheese. What is it called? A board, like a cheese board. So tasty. Let me just drink some of this water. I did an episode on the state responded to Ann Taylor's discovery, and that's when I made a big old deal about why is Bill Thompson so worried about informants? Why is he already talking about informants and saying that he's not going to turn over search warrants and he's talking about informants and he's going to invoke privilege? And now, mind you guys, this is all the way in January, like this is all wild. Like, this is really interesting. Like, this isn't what, should be happening. You wouldn't think, but it all comes full circle. Early on, I dedicate a lot of my videos to the father of Kaylee. He reminds me of my dad, and I made that known. And I can still respect people and have difference of opinions on things or how I would go about something and how I would deal with something. And we're never going to know how we would, act in a certain situation. And I'm not one to try to judge anybody, how they, whatever they want to say, whatever they want to do in a situation like that. Like, I just feel like, they have a pass, however they want to be. But they kind of shouldn't be judged for it. And if you want to judge somebody for it, then I'm more or less going to judge you because you're an idiot, because nobody knows how we would be. What the moral of the story of why I wanted to say that is because you can still respect people and have difference of opinions of people. You can still, especially based off of if I have more information than you or I have different information than you, I could have a difference of opinion on something because you don't have the information that I have and vice versa. And I was really big on how in the world are they writing people off? And so are the Gonsalveses. They were like, how are you saying that you can just like say that this person isn't involved, they don't have anything to do with it, this person doesn't have anything to do with it? It wasn't until we got the PCA that we find out about a DoorDash. It wasn't until the PCA that we found out that, oh wait, now one of the survivors is a witness. There's things that the PCA tell us that the whole time that the cops were telling us something different. So that in itself gives you reason to pause. Okay. Cops are allowed to lie to you, to get you to say whatever. Like, that's what they're allowed to do, right? So I'm allowed to be cautious when I just want to, believe whatever. With that said, I came and I did an episode of who are the Moscow Police Department officers. I wanted to know who everybody was that was on the, who makes up the department. Then who makes up who's in the ISP, who's involved, who are these people, what type of experience. We started hearing obviously all about Payne, and he's like just a 2-year person with the department. So I did a big reveal on the Moscow Police Department because I did a big reveal on White Avenue. White Avenue is where there was a bunch of calls where, hey, I'm looking for a dog. I want to check on a dog. I want to know if that has anything to do with Kaylee's dog, Then over in White Avenue, we have police officers living over there at these White Ave apartments. We have a hella White Elantras living over there. So I do a White Ave pregame November 12th football episode. I do mainstream media bombshells that basically I revealed that mainstream media went and requested the reports that I did and chose to bury them. Instead of, I made it known to see the victims a month and 2 months before their murder, mainstream media had those reports and didn't do anything with them. Meaning that if I would have never put out those body cams, they probably wouldn't be out to this day, because I went back and looked and I said, well, this person works for this agency. What? And now they told me that we never went and got the body cams. We just got the reports. Well, once you saw that existed, you didn't think to see if there was body cam footage? And their claim is that, nope, you scooped us on that. We dropped the boat. We didn't even think about that. I call bullshit. That's me. But whatever. So thought it was weird. Then I exposed that Moscow lead detective, I thought he wasn't following protocol with when he was arriving at scene for those, what do you call them? The noise complaints. Why do you guys have 4, 5, 6 officers? Like, what are you doing? It's a noise complaint. You know what I mean? Then number 58, episode 58 was the first time I talk about the Enan Harsh connect with drugs. Okay. And that he was a neighbor. Then I talk about that there's only one cell tower in Blaine, Idaho. Then 60, I talk about Dylan Mortensen and Showalter's Boise, Idaho connect. They went to the same high school. They're from the same area. They know each other. 61 is Idaho4. I compared it to the Foxy Noxie case. I did an episode on Foxy Noxie and compared it to the Idaho4 case in terms of like how the media was. Then the infamous Justin interview, episode 62. Episode 64 was I did another episode on Enan Harsh and a route that involved his parents' house and the PCA. 67, 66, 60, 65, 67, 68. Those were all about the search warrant. Should they be sealed? Should they not be sealed? Episode 67 was one of my biggest call-in shows that I did when I was debating on how I wanted to do the call-in shows. And that's when I said I wanted to give people like 2 to 3 minutes, take the link, come on. I don't want people like just sitting on a panel. That wasn't what I wanted. I wanted people that wanted to contribute. I wanted people that wanted to speak on the topic at hand, not just random stuff, whatever was being discussed at that point. 68 was my Elantra and Pennsylvania home search warrant, and broke it down with Scott Roeder, talking about the fact that we have a problem for the first time. And the problem is that nothing is in the PA home and nothing is in that Elantra. In terms of what they took, I don't see anything in terms of how are we linking Brian Koberger to this case, okay, to these victims. Then I did an episode on the vandal alert. And this is when I started getting my questions, my red flags were going up about this whole timeline of when parents were notified and people talking behind the scenes, meaning the students talking, using different apps to talk. What time was that 911 call? How in the world are you in a house for 9 hours and you think to call people over? You'd only call people over if there was a reason to call people over. Okay. But everything about it. So I wanted to go and like, let's see where this takes us to do some uncomfortable. Let's see if I can get some students to talk. And that's what started happening. That's how we'll get to it. So I did a vandal alert episode. Then I did an episode between 2 and 2:15 a.m. because was Ethan and Xana home at 2 or 2:15, between 2 and 2:15? Then I interviewed Enan Harsh, 71. Then finally, the search warrants were unsealed, episode 72 and 73, part 1 and part 2. I did a follow the money episode. thank you guys for the super chats. Thank you guys very much. I'm trying to click on these. There you go. Thank you. The reason follow the money is the search warrants. When those search warrants became unsealed, it was very interesting to me. It was like they wanted all this information on their banking. Obviously social media, obviously their phones, but they want a ton of information on banks and credit cards. 75 was who will take the stand at the preliminary hearing? Okay. 76 was I wanted a deep dive between 3:29 a.m. and 4:04 a.m. 77 was November 16th to the 14th. I wanted to talk about what was Bryan Kohberger doing the week leading up to the murders. You know, what was going on the week leading up to the murders. Obviously, Kaylee wasn't there, right? She was home. So if Bryan Kohberger wants to take out Kaylee, how does he find out that she fucking makes it back into Moscow? I do a big episode on, is the DNA admissible? I do a big episode on the search warrants, and I expose the order that they were sought out, and I provided that list. And then I did a search warrant on when the chronological order of when they actually received it, and what, like, how was their investigation flowing? Like, what information did these detectives deem a priority that they were out obtaining search warrants? And what was the order? That was really, really important for me to understand how they got to Bryan Kohberger. I've been saying that since day one, since he was arrested. How did you get to Bryan Kohberger? And that's going to tell you when somebody hands you their reports and you see what they did every single day, like what Ann Taylor would have on that's discovery. She would be going through these police reports. And when you interview somebody, they say to you, hey, yeah. And then they start saying people's names, or I know I saw so-and-so, he was there and he was with somebody that I never saw before, you know, things like that. Episode 80 was the big DoorDash. Was Bryan Kohberger the DoorDash driver? Okay. Crime Circus Drip Drop was, hey, do we think that Bryan Kohberger was the DoorDash driver? You know, people going back and forth on why not? Where was the DoorDash from? Who really ordered it? What time did it really get there? What kind of car was it in? Who was the DoorDash driver? Then there was, in March, the new motions and stuff was coming forward about the Brady Giglio. Okay. And I'm in contact with Emma Bailey's friend, a couple friends. And this was right after Emma Bailey, you know, she had her DUI. Okay. And then after the DUI would come the spring break when Caden Young would OD. So, but I do an Emma Bailey DUI cam reveal. But before that, I do the 500 interviews. Idaho4 police say that they did 500 interviews. And I said, who in the F did they interview? 500 people. I want to know who they were. So I did an episode and I broke it all down. And I broke down their first 38 episodes, And the really big part of it for me is that the parents thought that they were like being neglected or not so much involved. So it's like, did they really interview the parents? You know, who's really involved in this 500? I talked about the motives and money laundering. I talked about the rumors. And then I talked about WSU's circumstantial evidence in a timeline because I broke down when the sororities got a big drug bust that happened back a couple years before, and I talked about, is history repeating itself with why Moscow, Idaho wanted to have an undercover task force? Was it truly just about drinking and driving, or I'm sorry, underage drinking? Or was this something bigger? Like that campus, people are just walking all over, Are we worried about people drinking and driving? Are we worried about underage drinking? Are people getting out of control and dying? Or, like what's going on? Or was this about drugs? Because I just can't imagine putting together a task force to, monitor the campus drinking. But whatever. Then I dropped an all new body cam. People started talking to me. They wanted me to look into the Banfield, cameras again. And I revealed the King Road block party that had happened that, March, after. We talked about that. We compared it to the March panties incident. We compared it to this March. Then Bethany Funk's lawyer comes out and she's like, I want my client's subpoena quashed. Okay. So episode 93 was Bethany Funk's quashed subpoena. Bethany Funk thought she was going to get arrested. Bethany Funk is to be an exculpatory possible witness with her information. Again, I reveal about that ticket that she got in October. Then I go over the defenses, the investigators' affidavit. You can't find that anywhere on the internet now. Okay, the defense investigators' affidavit about Bethany's exculpatory evidence. Thank God we print everything over here at Truth and Transparency. We got it. I talked about Bethany being one of the surviving roommates, not having her car there. Did she still have her car? Episode 97 is when I went back to the Banfield cameras, did an episode for you guys and wanted to look, more closely at the Banfield. And what I was more or less looking at is I wanted to see where the unmarked car was coming from. And because it was parked, if you guys go and you notice the beginning of the Banfield, this is the most important part of the Banfield camera, is where the, if you now look at the Linda Lane footage and you look at the Linda Lane spreadsheet, the undercovers had flashlights, the undercovers' cars did the beeping noise, and the undercovers were parked literally right where King Road and that house was, just on that smaller tear down. So, let's see. And so that was one of the new cameras I revealed. It was the beginning part of that. People weren't paying attention to that beginning part of that video, which was the most important part. And it's where their car was parked before they get out to go and run and go get those kids. It's where was it coming from? And it's coming from right at the house. It's right there. And then I have an episode, I say Brian Koberger's apartment and searched warrant. Then I got that body cam. We showed that body cam, the Brian Koberger, and they redacted everything out of it. But something that's really important to take away from that is the search warrant at the apartment is that they say it was really sparse and there's not much going on. But he gets really stoked about something about that there was a computer left or something. But then they're asking each other if they can shut off their body cams. Just why? Leave it on. Like, don't you want it to make a report? Like, this way I don't have, I just use my camera. I titled my 100th episode on the case. I titled it Lana Gets Too Close for Comfort. And it was just a recap of a bunch of things that, I don't talk about the easy stuff, and everybody's always welcome here, and you can disagree with whoever, just be respectful of it, I took us on a field trip, and it was a chat session. That was one of our lives that we did with the group, with all of you guys joining in. I did the step-toe hit and run report. I then revealed a bunch of the Venmo transactions and how we were able to put together why we believed who was the people that were living in the house beforehand. Was the house the target? Were the people the target? We have to know about the house. So we went ahead and listed everybody that lived in the house the year before, when people moved out, who they paid, who was paying certain bills. And these are just all ways to find out, if people wanted to find out who lived in certain houses. There's a bunch of ways that you can do that depending on what you did for a living, and just, who you knew to get your hands on things. We did an episode on the suspect vehicle number 1, the white Elantra, and that it wasn't, basically it was suspect vehicle 1 was identified as 2 different vehicles. It's that simple. I did a huge episode. People didn't like it when I said, after I was talking with, Dave, and he flat out said he bought drugs from Xana. And I said, Xana sold drugs. And then I compared it to what happened back a couple years ago with the Sierra Windsor, and, that they did sting operations to take down the females that were selling out of the sororities, and they wanted the bigger dogs, but the girls didn't give them up. Then I did an episode of, it was called The Masks, and it was a flow chart of Cindy Barnhart, the Joe Campbell, Lake Campbell, people that were living in that area beforehand, people that I caught in stupid lies. But it was the woman that was in charge of she was Cindy Barnhart runs the media part of the University of Idaho. She is in charge of social media, and she was the cheerleader coach that put together this travel cheer, and all the locals in Moscow, the girls, Cindy groomed to become models and stuff like that, or told them they can become models. She basically was a second mother to Emma Bailey. So I got all the inside info track on, Emma Bailey's of the worlds and the locals of Moscow, these girls, look at all their pictures on social media. They're thinking that, I can tell you that my mom would never have been sharing half naked pictures of me and saying, "Oh my God, I'm so proud of my kid." She would choose a picture where I had clothes on to do that. And I just saw a different thing out of Moscow with Cindy. And Cindy was sporting off her daughter's half, her G-string ass. And, I'm so proud of my daughter. Look at how beautiful she is. Okay. Okay. I did episode 108 was my exclusive Dave interview, and the infamous now Snapchats, and that, hey, yes, we all knew about the murders before the police did. So that Dave episode, that exclusive interview that happened here, and I have confirmation that 100, that's when everything started going a little south. And that's when new search warrants started coming out in March, in April, May, and June. Go check out all the new search warrants. That's when they started happening. We started revealing that, hey, and 109 was the secret grand jury episode. And then I said, no, Emma and Brian Colbert are not siblings. But after all that stuff that happened in March with Snapchat, that was in April. But March is all the exculpatory stuff with Bethany. Then you get the Dave stuff. Now you got the secret grand jury. Emma Bailey and her friend come on panel. Well, not Emma Bailey, but I had... this is when Dateline did their episode. And I was like, who are these sources for Dateline? And I did an episode. I was like, who are these sources for Dateline? Because this is all, what they're claiming is not true. Dateline, you're so off. And I got royally upset about it. This is why people can't get a fair trial. If Brian Colbert is guilty, I want him to spend the rest of his life behind bars. Amen. Okay. But what we're not allowed to do is we cannot allow mainstream media to go and tell people that Brian Kohlberger was driving a 2013 white Hyundai Elantra that was seen on camera. That's what Court TV was putting out there as well. And I'm like, this is absolute craziness. And I laid into him. I was tagging him. I was like, this is bullshit. Told Nancy Grace, same thing. Anyways, they do an arraignment episode because guess what? They go from having this, we're going to do a preliminary hearing to now all of a sudden we're going to do a secret grand jury. Boom. Brian Kohlberger's indicted. I was not happy. I like transparency. I don't think some of the families were happy, and then other families, they just, are avoiding it. I do an episode on the fact that there's no evidence linking Brian Kohlberger to the Dana Smithers case. So I reveal that. So I talked about that. I did a new timeline episode with the additions. Then I do a very, very controversial episode with Daniel from the Drunk Turkey Show. And it was, I come out on the record and I say that I believe that the parents were notified before the 911 call, and it's based in the own words of the interviews of the family. Okay. So I do an episode, it's episode 115. And I say parents called before the PCA 911 time. And I cited all my sources. And my sources were their own interviews. And I put it all out there. And one of the big things is that it was never talked about again, but Kaylee's mom actually texted Kaylee that morning. So when she says that her niece called and her niece was like, have you talked to Kaylee? And she's like, no, yesterday I was texting with her. She never says no, but I texted her this morning. I haven't heard back from her. Anyways, that was and I still stand by that. I do an episode titled Police, Parents, and President of University of Idaho. I do the real University of Idaho, and I call out some of the stuff about that's going on in the university. I do a new body cam, episode 118, and it's the sign guy, and it's the guy from the grub truck. Okay, the sign guy. Then I do a episode 119, which was 1122 King Road, shocking house history. Okay. And then I do a Idaho4 scene reenactment. And then I do a Scott Perky episode of The Small World. Okay. Then I reveal to everybody that, did you guys know that the University of Idaho president, Scott Coomer Green, he lived at 1122 King Road? I revealed that. I revealed all the documentation surrounding this huge pedophile ring around that house. And the hands that it passed, and just that, God, I reveal, why was Kaylee ever using that address before she was living there? That's just so weird. To me, I would never, just, how would that even pop in your head to give that address? Then I did an episode 122. Did I find the PCA white Elantra, which was actually a totally different make and model? Then I do an episode that prosecutors turn over exculpatory evidence. I talk about the defenses. They're missing out on so much discovery. I do a March 30th, 2023 bombshell reveal. I do before niece calls Christy. Christy texts Kaylee. Payne identifies Kaylee and Maddie without needing any identifiers when he's going through the PCA, which is a very, very, very interesting way to look at that. Like when you talk about Xana and I need to find, I saw her her ID, or later come to find out that was Ethan Chapin. How do you know that that's Kaylee in the same bed? It could have been another friend of hers in that bed. How are you knowing that that's Kaylee and not saying later come to find out that it was, who identified Kaylee right then and there? Just very odd wording. just not, just whatever. It's going to be problematic down the road, I'm telling you. Then I talk about, let's see, episode. I did a rewind, and I want to talk again about the police taking a picture of Kaylee's ID. Right before a murder. Talk about Brian Kohlberger being a possible informant, or who are these informants? I talk about the initial reports, and I go all the way back to the beginning, and I found all the initial stuff when, people were reporting on the Moscow, Idaho crimes in terms of like, there was a vandal alert that went out. There was then the Argonaut there. What was every initial report? Then I do a big episode with no DNA from any of the victims in any searched place of Brian Kohlberger, his car, nothing. This is when the big thing comes out. There is nothing linking Brian Kohlberger to this crime physically, except for the fact that we have this sheath, which, in my opinion, if you don't have a sheath, you don't have an arrest period still to this day in this case. Okay, that's my take on this. Nobody would be arrested right now in this case. All right, that's my personal opinion. My personal opinion is that nobody would be arrested in this case. Then I did an episode because after I found out that there was I had talked to Scott Roeder. How can there be nothing in that car, which was said to be the second, like that's like a secondary crime scene. Like you're running, you're supposed to do this in eight minutes. You know what I mean? You're going to be jumping in this car and you need to get the hell out of there. So I did a who framed Brian Kohlberger, and it's not necessary that it would be the police. Okay, we have 9 hours until a 911 call was made. It could have been anybody in 9 hours, plus then obviously you have the police. And then I come to the closing out stuff here, which is June 27th. I do the motion, the oral arguments. We show that. Then episode 134 is when I go and do a Tolson officer training records episode. And that's what leads me into the Brian Drake case, Dr. Moore case. Because I am on a hunt to find out who these officers were involved in their decision making and why they would go this way versus that way. And so back in June 27th is when I went full dive into the ISP and what they covered in terms of what cases were recent. And I came across this 2020 case. Then I do my Marilyn, Emma Bailey's best friend that was sitting passenger seat shotgun with her. Emma Bailey tried to throw her under the bus and say that anything that you find in that car was going to belong to Marilyn, who's a mom. So I had Marilyn on the show. I did breaking footage from the Linda Lane to expose a sunroof of that same vehicle, but more importantly, to expose this. Everybody's talking about, at the same time that Linda Lane footage came out, I got the body cam, which I thought was way more important. And I think I need to do another live about it. And it's from the sign. It's from the guy with the sign. And the reason that this was important is because everything that the undercovers were involved with that day, and people don't know this, is there's none of these, somebody called the police and they're responding. That's not any call that came in that day. There are no calls that came into the police that day. These are people, these two guys are undercover officers. When they come upon something they see and they're going to radio in and make themselves known to dispatch over the radio that they're handling something, that's when it all kicks in. And it's like, that's considered like a 911 call. Okay. So nobody called 911 to talk about Banfield. There's kids in Banfield. No, nobody was calling 911 or the police that that evening. Okay. This was the noise complaints. No, there was calls for that. Okay. But everything that happened on the night of these homicides, there was no calls into the police. These were people, 2 dudes, okay, that were out doing, quote unquote, you have the regular cops. These are 2 regular cops, but tonight they're undercover. All right. And they're the ones that anytime that they walked up to somebody and they gave the girl and her boyfriend or the guy that was walking back, they got open container. And nothing happened to the dude, even though he had an open container, but nothing happened to him. She got hit. Then we have the sign guys. Then we have the band field. All of these things, these were all instances that the cops just came upon, and then it had then they radioed in and they were running people's, here, run this person's name through. So that's how all of that happened. So when I get messages or emails when people are like, hey, did you get the 911 call of this? Did you get the 911 call of that? Or why is it saying that this happened at this time? And, and I really want to explain that to you guys is nobody called. I found that out day one, but that's not how it was. So if you guys missed that part, it's kind of important, which is these undercovers were radioing in once they came up to somebody. The most important thing is where these undercovers were coming from, which was where the undercovers were coming from at the time of the last one, which was the sign. They were coming from the 700 block. They were coming from where the police department is. That's where the 700 block of Indian Hills is. That's where they're saying Bryan Kohberger's mysterious car is dropped down from WSU's campus. I personally believe that I can't wait to see this footage, because did you all report your fucking hybrid as being that at 326? Because I did the math, guys. At 326, where they're saying this vehicle was, 326 you drive, and at 329 they're there to get the sign people. That's exactly how long it would take. It's mind-blowing to think that Bryan Kohberger and the police were literally in the same spot. Okay, because if it's not them, then you're telling me then there's got to be 2 vehicles that are right close by each other, because that's where the police were. That's where they were at 326, within the same spot that they're saying Bryan Kohberger was. Think about that. Think about how crazy that is. Okay. Also, I tried to get the dash cam. They would not give me the dash cam. I wanted the dash cam of them driving up and to meet the guy with the sign that he took from the gas station. I wanted the dash cam of that. Now, maybe there is no dash cam. Okay. But maybe there is. All right. And it's curious because if they're coming from the area that I think they're coming from, and there's not a white Elantra over there too, it's just going to be interesting. It's going to be truly interesting. They've been doing their own investigation. We've been doing one over here on Truth and Transparency. And we've been more than fair on both sides, because I'm telling you, if Bryan Kohberger did this, he should be in prison for the rest of his life. Or if you believe in the death penalty, then, that's on you. But I don't want that on my conscience. I don't need to do that. He can just fucking have a horrible life every single day doing nothing, Is that Octavia? Again, I want to give a shout out to all my mods. For the past year, they've been nothing but amazing. They make chat amazing. So cheers. Thanks to Bella for giving me my cheese board. But here, finishing this out. Then I did an episode 137. I did at 1:56 a.m. Does that really truly match the original timeline of the screams of that guy, Joseph Morris, whatever, when you look at Linda Lane and 1:56 and the screams. Then I did an episode, FBI uses a car headed the wrong way. Then I did the Brett Kopaka lured. I said it. I said he was lured to the coffee house apartments. And guys, now that I actually have the report of everything with Brett Kopaka, I stand by that shit. I am trying to get my hands on the lease information. I want to know when Brent Kapaka signed his lease supposedly to live there, because guess what we have in the reports that we got from the Brent Kapaka situation? It was just his ID and where his ID said that he lived. Okay. I don't ever change my ID. So back in the day, you would have had my ID address as where I was definitely not living. So I titled my episode because I believed this. I thought that it was all crazy. And I was like, I just believe that he was lured to the coffee house apartments that day for whatever reason. And that something may have happened, earlier, whatever. But however this went on, I was like, it was something was weird about it. And so I titled that the episode because I believe something was off about it. Now that I have all these reports, you're damn right. That man, okay, and everything that they want to say happened, that is not what happened. That is not what happened at all with that poor man. And people can go ahead and praise and think that they did a great job with the situation. No. And anybody that was in that house should have been arrested, because you didn't know who the person was with the guns and who was threatening or anything like that. And you would need to sit people down. You'd be interrogating the fuck out of those people. Okay. Because if that's the case, we can all just call and start blaming things on other people. And then when the police show up, like, that's not what they do. Like, they listen to both sides. It's just wild what they think that they did with that situation. I do an episode of History Repeating Itself, WSU Connect. I'm telling you, that episode, I think it's fire. That episode is fucking fire. That episode required so much digging, and I believe it was digging in the right places because it mirrored what I believe that was happening on Moscow's campus, which is you don't put together an undercover task force to take down drinking and drugs unless there's a problem. And that's what happened on WSU's campus back in the day. And they did the same thing. Okay. So I believe that they were doing the same thing, and they were trying, and they thought that these girls would roll. Meaning, I'm not going to get, here, what name do you want? You want to know who I got my drugs from or who I'm getting? Like, they don't, you think that they want a sorority girl that's just buying some cocaine? No, they want to know where you're getting this mass amounts of cocaine, right? You give me that name, you're going to be fine. Well, back in the day, a girl that was a Pi Phi did not roll, and it ended up costing her, and she's not able to be a doctor today because of it. But that tells me that was that important for her not to roll. So, and history always repeats itself. Then I do a big episode on Kaylee's LinkedIn. It's missing. What else is missing? OnlyFans. What else? I talk about the state's discovery response. I mean, this discovery is everything. They're trying to figure out, why do they need their hands on all this discovery? Because if Brian Kohlberger truly was and believes that he is being set up, you continue to ask for this discovery, and you're continuing to follow these. You're continuing to ask for stuff that you're able to, like, get little breadcrumbs when people mess up. And that's what I see Ann Taylor doing. I released the Linda Lane cam spreadsheet, and everybody's going wild about that, in terms of just everyone's talking about Linda Lane. Who truly leaked it? I don't give a rat's ass who's behind it, anything like that. How is it going to be beneficial at trial? And all I know is that what you would want if you're someone like an Ann Taylor is you'd want the spreadsheet. The spreadsheet you're going to be able to do something with, and going to be able to get to things super quickly out of a 6-hour, ordeal to, like, write down everything. But you cannot, when you watch Linda Lane, sit there and say, that's that car, that's that car, that's that car. You're a damn liar, because you can't tell anything. You can just see headlights. Headlights are approaching. Okay, there's a vehicle coming. You have no idea how many people are in that car. You have no idea what kind of car it is. And then you have to prove the camera is not off any of its time. I do another Enon Harsh episode because I found out that Enon Harsh was subpoenaed by the defense. You know why? It was just to prove that they didn't do their due diligence and they weren't interviewing people. I do the search warrants. Again, I show that there's wrong info put in. We get in here into July, and I do a deep dive on the 700 block of Indian Hills because I wanted to know every single address of every single person that lived on that street and what kind of car they drove, so that you'd be able to say that, well, that car could belong to this person drives a very similar car. This person, find out where they were that night, get their phone. Like, I mean, you're just trying to process, possibly add somebody being there or eliminate people being there, right? That's going to be huge for you if you're Brian Kohlberger to say that that is not my vehicle, because that's where they're just miraculously dropping down your car from WSU. They're saying they have no idea how it got there because they cannot pinpoint it from WSU to that point. And for me, you cannot just do that. You're going to have to be able to sell it to me that car you can identify by something. Otherwise, no way. No way, especially when you're sitting here telling me that it's a 2013. I can tell the difference. I did remember I did all those lives about the Elantra, like a lunatic. I could tell you everything about a damn Elantra and all the from 2010 to 2016. Then I did a big old live on the house changes from 122 King Road from 2019 to 2021. There used to be a garage. There isn't a garage now. So I did all the house changes. I talked about how people were on a lease, then weren't on a lease, who was living next door. Then all these girls started doing steroids, and a lot of fights. I know Bella thinks everything's funny that I talk about.
The steroid one, because like, remember?
Oh yeah, they were just getting roided out, man.
But like they had like really nice thighs, like big, like scary thighs.
Yeah,
like, guys would be scared of those thighs.
Yeah, going down on those thighs.
No, not going down, like being strangled.
You'd be strangled by those thighs. But and then I backed that up with then the sugar daddy episode, and learning all about you guys. That's a big thing. Sugar daddies and using guys that are, way older and they have
using, or is it like a
it's using, yeah, you use them for like so they take you out and buy all your drinks.
But I mean, you look good, they look good having a girl like that. So is it usury or is it just like a symbiotic relationship?
No, they're using the guys. And I did an episode on how you would defend Brian Kohlberger. And then there's been lives over the past, couple weeks I didn't put into this, but the last one that I mentioned here is, Coffee with the Chief, because I talk about the road that, Fry has been a Moscow, Idaho boy from jump. This is all he knows. But then there's a lot of people that are in this that's not their case. So, I think the questions that people still have today are the questions that people had then, except, there is an arrest. The title here is, I did a little play on words with 1122 King Road. It's one house, it's one arrest. It's two campuses, truly, that were involved in this, like two cities. And then there's two sides. There's two stories. You're going to have your prosecution side and you're going to have your defense side. And from the 1122, you have then four victims, four families, and you have a fifth family in the fact that Brian Kohlberger's family, I believe, are victims as well. I think it's crazy that 6 people went to sleep and only 2 people woke up. It's shocking that not everybody would be deceased, to be honest. If you're talking about somebody that's stalking a house and knowing the ins and outs, and why would you leave any survivors? Why would you leave anybody to, as a witness? That doesn't make any sense. People can say that there wasn't enough time. I don't believe that at all. He was tired or
Visuals.
um,
You did really good on the title. Can you talk about that? Like, it's really 1122 King because you're just so witty, though. Like,
and I just saw it. That's what I just said.
it's good.
Thanks. I think in the beginning, I think you hear the families talk about it, that they were told like it was whoever did this was sloppy, that they left their DNA, that they left the DNA at the scene, and and I'm thinking to myself, I think this crime scene is anything but sloppy. If that's all there is a sheath, think about it. I mentioned it earlier, and I'm gonna close out with it, that I don't believe that anybody would be arrested in this case if that sheath wasn't there. So tell me, when people want to say there's all this other evidence and just wait for it, it's going to come out at trial. I disagree. And I think that's why the defense keeps on saying what they're saying. There's nothing tying my client. There's nothing here. So the only thing is that sheath. And I think then you have to ask yourself, how is there nothing in that car? Well, he had all that time to clean it. Well, then there should be signs of a cleanup. I really want to see more of the connections, because it's just, how did you get to Brian Kohlberger? And they're going to say, oh, we have a car that we see there. Well, we haven't seen that. No, there's been no footage that someone's handed and put out there and says, here's the King Road house right there. Here's this car passing by 4 times. Have you guys seen that? Because I know I haven't. And when I hear people talk about this case, like, I need to do a live where I go around and I just ask random people, hey, do you know that? What do you think about that? Oh God, he's so guilty. I just like to hear what people think that they know, and they get their information from mainstream media. And that's just what's awful. But think about this as an investigator, you have 4 boyfriends, or 3. You have to get through boyfriends. You have to get to the inner circle to get to the outer circle. And so it's, when you're coming across things, how are you ruling out the DoorDash driver? How are you ruling out that it wasn't more than one person when you have unknown DNA? Oompa says that the connection is going to be his thesis. Well, we'll see. What you munching on, Lana? Well, I have this little board here. It's got like a bunch of like meats on it. It's a meat tray, I think you'd call it.
Charcuterie.
Huh?
Charcuterie board.
Oh, okay.
But you don't even need the cheese. That's like my favorite thing. You know how hard I have to look for that shredded Parmesan?
I don't know. So good.
Ask Mike dropping. She's always on when I'm like, where's the shredded Parmesan? Yum.
Mm. Mm-mm-mm.
Yum.
Yeah. Ethan's parents wanted to come out and just say there was no love triangle. There's no drugs. These are good kids. Well, I know I like pickles on mine too. I moved from pickles to meats. Nothing but the meats. People say if maybe Jack would have answered his phone, what would have happened if, somebody would have given them a different, a ride home, or I still look at that night and you just look at like, there's all these weird things that were going on. It was like Um,
Remember how quiet everyone said it was that night?
Yeah, everyone said it was really quiet that night. It was a really quiet night. Nothing was really going on. I just think they're going to have a hard time in court.
Well, this year's been, it went by so fast, right?
It's been a year. I can't believe it, y'all.
But we need to like keep the victims.
I mean, it was a targeted attack right from the jump. Right from jump. You know, these investigators didn't know what was going to be on that sheath. So think about it when they say that this was a targeted, isolated attack, right? Targeted, isolated attack. Like, how could they feel so confident in that? How could they be so confident in that? And is it that they're going to have to come out and say, like, we had to make a decision to keep our campus at bay and keep our community at bay. And so, is that what is going to have to be said? That we were just saying that to not panic the community. Yeah, I mean, I've been watching a lot of old cases, and one that I'm watching that I actually never followed back in the day, and you guys are all gonna be like, wow, you didn't. I never followed the Casey Anthony case. I never did. It wasn't something I wanted to follow. And but I'm following it now because I'm covering the Shannon Gardner case with Jared Bridegan, murder for hire. And I just think that there's going to be so many questions that everyone's going to be asked, and what are these answers going to be? What are these answers going to be?
Explain what the connection is between Casey Anthony and that case. Jose Baez.
Yeah, Jose Baez is the connection.
And he's the lawyer, right?
Yeah, Jose Baez represented Casey Anthony, so I wanted to watch it because Jose Baez is going to be representing Shanna Gardner in the Jared Bridegan murder for hire case. And if you guys, watch the Dennis case, this one is, I think, going to be that on steroids because it's Jose Baez. I think that if Jose Baez would have represented the Dennis, it could have been a totally different outcome. But I mean, how do you think that Bethany and Dylan are going to be answering these questions? I mean, how do you not call 911 for that long? How do you move on from the fact of just because? So think about this now. Just because Bethany and Dylan's DNA wasn't on the sheath doesn't mean that they don't know the person whose DNA is on the sheath, meaning Bethany and Dylan. Okay. So like, how are you just moving? And then you have these unknowns. How are you just thinking that this could only be one person versus like 2 or 3 or 4 people? I mean, you don't have any results back. You don't have any results back. You haven't looked at any film. You haven't looked at surveillance. And you're just coming out saying this is an isolated targeted attack. What are you banking that on? What are you banking that on? And I think that they just said it to keep this town at bay, and to keep everybody from not going. And they're going to have to say that on the stand, because what can truly be the reason that you would say that this is an isolated targeted attack at that point? If the only thing, you don't have blood written on the walls that say, I mean, how? And then you look at Kaylee's family was like, her sister, you guys all need to leave. You need to leave now. You are not safe. These people were just killed in the middle of the night while they were sleeping.
In the safest place, right?
Mm-hmm.
So your home, your bed, we talked about that last year, right? Before anything was out. How scary that would be, right?
Yeah. But and then they didn't just not call 911 the first time. Then when they woke up that morning, they didn't call 911 because somebody else did. So like these girls, like how could those four be truly the targets? The only way that that's possible, I don't believe that it was. I think that that's not the case. Remember, Kaylee didn't have a stalker. What did Maddie have a stalker? He goes into Maddie's room not expecting to see Kaylee in there. So his only thing was that's what the Gonzalez's are saying. I think that kind of makes more sense. After he killed, realizing that Kaylee was in that bed, he had no choice but to kill Kaylee, right? And it comes down, why would you go into Xana's room? Because it's on the opposite way. You wouldn't. They would have had to run into each other. And then what? Xana's running back to her room. And I just think of all this commotion, how Dylan thinks that like nothing's going on and wouldn't be caught, even though she opened up her door 3 different times. And after reading the Moore's PCA, and I see how they change witness statements, how they tweak things, and they can try to get away with saying that's not a lie. So after seeing all that, how are you going to be able to say that people went over there to have like an after party? Yeah, I went over there, but I left. Well, how do you know that they left and everybody wasn't dead yet? You know, you have all these people that were in that house and they're going to say that they were in that house. You have body cam that's showing people walking away from that house. How are none of these people going to be, their DNA's in the house too? I just think that this case is just going to be so, like, if any of that DNA is semen, it's unknown, holy shit. Is all I have to say is holy shit.
Yeah, that's going to be weird.
That's going to be a problem. But how these officers could just tell themselves that we don't have to try to make a family tree to get those unknown DNAs, but we're going to go just for the sheath. So, but I wanted to keep this live just around everything that we've kind of covered on this channel and taken us down, when they said we're gonna, follow all these tips and blah, blah, and here they told the world to look for a vehicle. Never changed it. Letting all of these people continue to look and to give tips for something that could not possibly help them. Who does that? Who does that? I believe it's somebody trying to flood their own tip line so they could do exactly what they did. Hand and Taylor 7 terabytes worth of bullshit. But at the point when you were like, okay, hey, we do believe that this car could possibly be a 2011 now to 2016. Why wouldn't you widen that for the public? Who was sitting at the round table? Who's sitting at that round table that was making the decisions, every decision in this case, on what we should tell the public? Why should we use these stock footages of 2 cars that don't even look alike? One has a sunroof and one doesn't.
Coomer Green.
Come on. Like, who is the one that's saying that this is how we should be doing this? Go watch the Boston Marathon bomber. Go watch that and hear how the FBI was clashing with the Boston police and how they wanted to handle things. I mean, somebody at the end of the day has this decision-making power, and it's one person. Whose decision was it to do all these certain things that they decided to do in this case? And we're going to find all this out in trial, if it's a good trial, if, Ann Taylor's very specific and very, do I think that Ann Taylor would benefit from having me on her team? Absolutely. Do I think I'm one of the best that knows this case? Absolutely. Do I think that Ann Taylor can afford me? No, I don't. But if she was to call me up and toss me some six figures, I'd consider.
Come on, you would do it for less than six figures.
No.
Oh my God.
6 figures.
I need to negotiate.
I think I can find anything if you give me a discovery.
She can though, but that's really true. That's freaking, she's really good. That's her stuff right there. You can find anything.
Yeah.
Anything.
Yeah, I do. I believe in that. I believe I can connect dots really quick. I believe that's something that takes somebody like maybe a month to 3 months to 4 months to figure it out or to get it, I'll get it in like less than a week, probably less than 48 hours. But I need the material. I don't have the material. I can't help you. So, but I just want the truth, whatever it is and if it's the truth that Brian Kober killed 4 people, Brian Kober goes to prison. If he truly didn't, then I think it'd be a sin to send an innocent person to prison for something that they didn't do, especially something like this, because I think it'll happen again. And if we don't figure out how this truly did happen, and if it's people abusing their power and power positions, like, it should be exposed. And it's a lot to do. It's hard to do.
Especially in a system that's really old. Been going on for a long time.
But I said either this was really, really good police work or something's off. And because I said you'll be able to get to Brian Kober eventually, but as quickly as they did, no. Sorry. You don't just have to plant cars down in the middle of the street and say it's Brian Koberger's car. There's no identifying marks. That's not how it goes. It's not how it works. So, and I think that there's going to be a suppression issue. I think that this is going to be a time that it's going to be, does the sheath even get in there? Meaning that that's the only way they obtain Brian Koberger's DNA, meaning that that's out. So if the sheath is out and you can't put him at the crime scene with that sheath, because it's like, it's going to be interesting. I just know that what I've learned is that you would have never compared. You would have gotten your profile. You'd have gotten your sample off of whatever you went and got as far as the DNA, and you would have compared that. You would have, ran that to then compare that to your sample. And it would have just came back as, it's not a match. So you're supposed to go and get the DNA of the person of your sample. But I pray every night for truth to prevail. I pray that it sucks that our world has cases like this. But I'm thankful for all of you guys, and I'm thankful for the people that truly care and do things the right way and want to bring awareness the right way. And Brian Koberger's family is just as much as victims as the 4 family victims. They woke up, they didn't do anything that day, and I think that everybody can learn something from the Kobergers. They're being quiet, and I think that's how you want to be. Nobody can use anything against you when you're quiet. And so literally, if a police officer asks you how the fuck your day is, I wouldn't say a word. Just keep on going. So can't believe it's been a year. I wish that more of their friends would speak up and speak out. I wish that more of their friends would want to know the truth, want to figure out truly what happened. And it's the opposite. Like, none of these people are talking at all. They're not out on the lawn. You know, it's like it never happened there. It's really interesting. It's just really weird. I just know if that was my best friend or my best friends that were killed, I would be, you guys have all these formals that you do with the sororities and the fraternities. Why aren't you doing something like, I just think that there should be more that's happening from the sororities and the fraternities that these people are a part of, seeing that justice happens, you know. And they're all being quiet. I think that's really telling. And not a single person has come forward and said that, oh, yeah, Brian Colbert was at a party. Oh, yeah, I saw him. Oh, yeah, this. Oh, yeah, that. Nothing. Nobody can put Brian Kohlberger. And if they have, then they're totally quiet and not saying anything. So, but you guys rock. I think that I don't think this goes to trial for another year. So we'll see. That's my guess, is that this trial starts this time next year. Around the 2nd, yeah. That's my guess. I don't know, though. But thank you, guys. Appreciate you. Thank you, all the mods. Thank you, all the members. You guys rock. Be safe out there.